Hi, I'm Alex Pault, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Today we're going to take a close-up look at the Omega Swatch Moonswatch Speedmaster. This is the Mission to Jupiter version, by the way. And we'll compare it to my Hesalite Speedy, and we'll look at some of the aspects of it. And basically, we're not going to do much else because everyone's talked this watch to death. But I did want to make some comments because I was also one of the people who was ranting when the first day craziness occurred. I have a short, in fact, it's the preview right now on the site, but I think I'm going to change it. But you can always find it in the archive. I was in front of the Swatch store in Frankfurt for several hours. I only did a 1-minute video, don't worry, it's not very long, because I did it when I got to the front of, well, I wouldn't say front of the line, but I got within shouting distance of the entrance, and it turns out that they hadn't had watches for several hours. They were just taking people's information, and I'm surprised that information hadn't percolated up the line, because I wouldn't have waited in line for that much time just to get my name taken down, especially considering I wound up buying this one in Manhattan. I have a really interesting story, actually, about how I managed to get my hands on this Swatch, because I was with a dear friend of mine, David. We went to kindergarten together. So here we are, two old guys who've been together on and off our entire lives. And so we knew each other quite well. And so I said, hey, let's go and let's do some watch shopping. And I took him into the Jacob & Co. shop, and I took him into JLC and Omega, and we also hit some more mainstream shops as well. But we had some fun going around, and I did a slideshow on that. You should check out the archive, Shopping for Watches in New York, because I also got to see that Patek Philippe electronic clock exhibit in Manhattan on that trip, and I made a video about that as well. But back to the Swatch Moonswatch, I went into the Swatch boutique on Fifth Avenue with my friend David, and they immediately said that they were out of stock on the Moonswatch. And David looks at me and he says, well, why are you even in this store? Because we just spent half the day balling around, looking at watches in the $5,000 to $50,000, $100,000. The Jacob & Co. Richard Mille was a waste of time. The Jacob & Co. shop had stuff that was over $1 million in it, and so David was wondering, why am I in the Swatch store? Because to him, Swatches are just cheap junk. And I said, no. Swatch is the Swatch Group. They own everything. They own Omega. That's why they can do this. They own a bunch of different companies, and they're actually pioneers in a lot of things in watchmaking. They're System 51, and I pointed to one of them on the shelf, as an example of modern horological engineering. And as I'm talking up Swatch, one of the sales clerks who had told me earlier they were out of stock says, we have 2 returns. And I'm like, well, hey, she must have overheard me talking up the company to my friend and said, okay, I'll do the extra paperwork, bring the return in and let this guy get one. And which is what she did. She gave me a choice of Mission to Earth or Mission to Jupiter. And I took the Mission to Jupiter. She probably would have sold me both if I was really nice to her, but I was so glad that she was nice enough to offer me one. I just took the one. And frankly, I don't need a bright green watch. And I was initially hesitant to get the Mission to Jupiter, but I thought, I get it for the show. And then I realized it matches khaki, so I threw it on Bond NATO, and now it's one of my summer lightweight wear watches. I really do like this watch as a lightweight quartz chrono. I just picked up this quartz chrono. I had a change of heart on quartz watches about a few months back, and whereas I wouldn't used to collect quartz, I realized that quartz is as obsolete as mechanical. There's no crystal oscillator inside that smartwatch, and so, or at least not an expensive smartwatch. And So I started buying quartz watches that I thought were interesting. Like the Ferrer has the super quartz in it, and well, this is the Moonswatch. And I'm going to keep my eyes open for other interesting quartz pieces that I might want to add to my collection. My local watch shop, one of my local watch shops, has that Sin compass, which is a GMT. It's a quartz GMT, and if you tilt the face away, it has a compass underneath. I'm going to check that out, and maybe I'll get it. He wants like 2,000 euros for it, but I don't have the budget this month because I blew my budget on a bunch of watches. I actually almost overextended. All I really did, though, was spend all my, ready savings because I had it budgeted for a different watch. But I picked up 2 watches where I was going to pick up one, but it was a less expensive piece. They were less expensive pieces, so I picked up a Cartier chrono, the Santos XL 100, and I picked up the IWC Antoine. It's a GMT. They call it UTC, and it's the one that's named after the author of the Little Prince books. So I've been a little busy in the watch buying side, so you'll get to see all of those pieces in upcoming episodes. So let's turn the camera around and talk about this one. Although I did want to ask you, if you do like this episode, please subscribe, or at least add a like, because it really does help the algorithm, and we really are very close to growing the channel to the point where it's going to really matter as far as being a voice in the community, which means your voice, because as many of you know, I do a live stream every Sunday at 8 o'clock GMT, and everybody's able to come in and ask whatever they want and talk about whatever they want in horology. So let's turn the camera around and check out this cool watch. So here we are with the Swatch Omega Moonswatch Speedmaster, a very interesting piece, and like I said, it really does represent a microcosm of the current watch industry, because it's based on branding, it's based on history, it's based on a lot of things, but it's also driven, unfortunately, by speculation. It's driven by poor management within the watch industry, and which is kind of sad, because it's actually quite a nice little watch. It's not the watch's fault that there's all of this controversy around it. So let's just look at the piece for what it is for a moment. It's a plastic homage to the Speedmaster, right? And it's got a 3 totalizer subdial layout. The interesting aspect is that it's a 1/10 of a second subdial here instead of an hour subdial there, or you know what I mean, because most mechanical watches do minutes and hours. Most quartz watches, though, tend to do tenths, which I like a lot, and you see on quite a few quartz chronos. Wristwatch check, I'm wearing my recently acquired Ferrer chrono, and this one does everything, literally everything. But then that's one of the nice things about a quartz piece. You can put a lot of functionality into it at a reasonable price point, and this is a Swiss-made super quartz movement. It's got some interesting differences from the Seiko Mecha Quartz movement. There are some serious differences, and I'll be pointing them out when I do the review of this piece. But let's move back to the Moonswatch. Now, the Moonswatch is an attractive piece. I mean, it's, even if you didn't look at its Speedmaster underpinnings, it is a nice looking piece. It comes in a variety of colors. This is the Mission to Jupiter, which is kind of like a taupe brown color. I didn't think I'd like it, but then I realized it matches khaki, so I put it on a NATO strap, and it's pretty much my lightweight summer watch to wear around when it's really hot, because it doesn't weigh anything, and the NATO is a great way to wear it. I have the factory strap, and I didn't even bother wearing it even once, because number one, I don't like this style of strap, and number two, I figured I'd keep the strap unblemished to retain the residuals, and considering that the NATO strap goes across the back of the watch and it's between you and your skin, I don't have to worry about ink bleeding or it impacting the color of the piece. Now, the interesting thing that I'll point out right now between this one, for example, and a Mecha Quartz is a Mecha Quartz has a smoother second hand because it uses additional gearing to simulate the movement of a mechanical chronograph hand. Because in a Mecha Quartz, they're using they're using the quartz module inside the watch to drive the chronograph portion of the watch. Similar in the way to the Oyster Quartz, actually, by Rolex. In the case of Rolex, they specifically chose a 1 hertz beat to make it look like a quartz. Basically, it was a dead seconds movement that they made using a quartz motor as the driver. Tenths of a second and reset. So it's a very straightforward quartz movement. Like I said, it's not a Mecha Quartz, so you could argue that they should have put, say, for example, the same super quartz movement that's in this piece, but then they would have had to raise the price more because this piece by Ferrer is about $700, but it's also a steel case watch. But I believe it has I'll test the crystal when I'm doing the review. But essentially, like we're saying, this is just a good plastic-bodied swatch, essentially, with the toss-in of being an homage to the Speedmaster. Now, there are several direct examples of collaborations of this nature, and since I like to talk about cars and watches, I'll point out 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. The Porsche 914 had a Volkswagen engine in it, and there were purists who said it wasn't a real Porsche, but today it's a collectible. And the Porsche 924, which had an Audi engine in it, is also today a collectible car. And at the time, people said it wasn't a real Porsche. Heck, people said that about the Boxster, and that had a Porsche engine in it. But looking at the Moonswatch, it is a good-looking piece, and I like the novelty of making the battery cover the planet in question. On each of them, the battery cover of the watch has a different motif, and since this one is Jupiter, it's Jupiter, even down to the Great Red Spot. And the box has all kinds of information about the planets, but you've seen plenty of box pictures. Now, the pushers, Adrian from over at Bark and Jack, he lost his pusher, and he had a mission to Jupiter as well. But I don't know what kind of stress he's put on his. I haven't had any problems with mine, but then again, I'm kind of a real chicken when it comes to my watches. I don't even let my waterproof pieces get wet beyond washing my hands with them. But let's zoom back in again I wanted to read the text that's on it. It basically is just Swatch, text about the watch. There's nothing fancy on it. Mission to Jupiter is on the back and some specs of the watch, which is, of course, in total contrast to a real Speedmaster, which has text on the back about how it is space qualified and it's the first watch worn on the moon. And, of course, it's got the beautiful hippogriff, or whatever you want to call the creature on the back of Omegas. But yeah, so this is what a real Speedmaster looks like on the rear. Of course, the case and everything is a very nice simulation. And then if we go back to the face, and here I'll try to hold this one steady while I zoom in. The only real giveaway between the brown and the black, you might think that the brown was just a special edition ceramic Omega Speedmaster from a distance, but obviously the subdial pattern is different, showing a different mechanism under the hood, as it were. Again, it's not a major difference, but if you weren't a Speedmaster aficionado, you may not even notice the difference between the two. But as far as case shape, the twisted lugs or the lyre lugs, as some people call them, it's a pretty good homage when it comes to that. Except for, as I said, the subdial pattern and the fact that you can get it in a lot of different case colors. So that was the Moonswatch, Speedmaster, Omega Swatch. It's a nice little plastic watch. If I compare it to, say, something like the Marie Lacroix Icon, I would say that this is a better value. Well, number one, it's less expensive, and it's also a plastic. It's a polymer composite watch. People will say it's bioceramic and all of this. It's okay. It's a compound polymer filled composite, and both it and the Icon Tide have similar materials construction. Where the Icon Tide does have a more robust metal framework underneath the plastic, which could address some of the issues that Adrian pointed out about construction on the Moonswatch. But then, again, that's a watch that's 3 times as expensive as well. So for the price point, it is a little expensive because you can get plastic Swatch-made chronographs for less than this, but you are paying for the homage. So let's turn the camera around and close out the episode. So that was the Moonswatch. You know, it's a really nice homage to the original, and it's an authorized homage. The company that made it owns both companies, so it may not be the perfect watch, but it's a pretty good watch. And I'm angry at the speculators and the company mismanagement and the facets that turned this into the sideshow circus that it became. But at the end of the day, it's a nice little, or big, it's a 42 millimeter, but it's a nice homage to a classic piece that brings it into the realm of affordability for a lot of people. Thanks for watching. If you agree, please like and subscribe. If you disagree, please leave a comment in the comment section and tell me why not. Take care now. Have a great one.